It was written of King David that he cared for his people with a true heart and led them with a skilled hand. It's not enough to just be a mat monster or a technical wizard. To be a good professor, you need so much more. And in my experience, I've been so fortunate to be under the tutelage of some of the world's greatest professors, at least what I estimate are the greatest professors. And I've noticed some things about them, some common threads, and some things about each one that really stood out to me. And I've kind of collected those things in my own professoring journal to help inspire my own journey to become the best professor that I can be. And I want to share that list with you today. Right at the top of my list, and something that I've noticed about some of the greatest coaches and professors, is that they are totally self aware. That is, they understand exactly what they're saying and why they're saying it, what they're teaching and why they're teaching it. They're not just kind of, just doing whatever and flying off the seat of their pants, but they're very intentional and they're very aware. And not just about their techniques, but they're also aware about how they talk to their students. They're aware of their verbal communication. They're aware of their nonverbal communication, like how they look when you approach them. Do they have their hands on their side, or they cross their arms, or they put off because students want to talk to them? But they're being very aware of those things. Also aware of their actions, knowing that their students are watching the kind of actions that they take and their inactions, the things where they don't take action on. And I think that's one of the greatest qualities of an amazing professor, an amazing coach, is just this ability and desire to become more self-aware. Another thing I've noticed about the highest level professors and coaches, and it kind of goes hand in hand with being self-aware, is that they act with great levels of integrity. They're not acting like they're perfect, and they're not trying to put off like they're perfect people, but you can tell that they're striving toward perfection, that they're trying to be a little bit better than they were yesterday. And they do the right thing even when nobody's looking or when they think nobody's looking. And believe me, your students are looking, they're observing, they're paying attention. And so I think one of the greatest qualities that you can have as a high level coach or a high level professor, and I'm talking outside of your ability to teach jujitsu well, outside of your prowess to be amazing on the mats, are these other issues, these maybe deeper rooted issues. The first one, as I said, is becoming self aware. The second one is acting with the highest level of integrity. And you'll notice that the best coaches, the best professors, they are acting with high levels of integrity and just striving to be the best them that they can be and inspiring their student base to do the same. Another thing you'll notice is a commitment and a focus to on purpose relationship building. I think the best professors and coaches realize that leadership is influence and influence is responsibility. Whether you like it or not, you're in a position of authority if you're a coach or a professor. And some of your students will look up to you. I remember hearing the story about a basketball player. This is like decades ago. And he was on an interview and he was being challenged by his bad behavior. And the lady interviewing him said, don't you think you should act right? Because all these kids are, they want to be like you. And he was protesting quite openly in front of the whole world that it was unfair for people to look at him like a role model. He's like, I don't want to be a role model. I just want to play basketball, and what I do in my personal life has no bearing, and kids shouldn't look up to me. And I think she disagreed. I certainly disagree. When you're in a position like that, whether you like or don't like the fact that you're in that position, you are an authority or somebody that some other people are going to look up to. And it's the same when you're a professor or a coach. Some of your students are going to look up to you. That's a burden that you're going to have to carry, whether you wanted to carry that burden or don't want to carry that burden. And so I think it's very important that you focus on creating teams and becoming a positive influence, which brings me to my next point. The best professors and the best coaches, in my opinion, lead by example. They lead the way. Now, maybe at your academy, you've got some pillars. We have pillars at our academy. And so our coaches and our professors lead the way in teaching the pillars and living by the pillars, and not in a preachy way. We're not trying to set ourselves above anybody. We're just trying to be the change that we want to see in this world. Not to quote some kitschy saying, but it's true. We want to do our best to make an impact in the world that we're in and be better people and maybe influence or create better people. And so one of the things that we can do to make that happen is just leading by example, setting the example in your pillars, setting the example in hygiene. You should be the guy that's there, just because you don't have to wear your gi because you're teaching, you should have your gi on. You should have your fingernails clipped and your toenails clipped, and you should be smelling right. Everything should be clean and tidy, setting the example of hygiene, and not just the easy stuff either. I'm talking about rising to a level of a specific morality, living in a way that's a benefit to you and a benefit to others, that actually does call people higher. Another thing that I've noticed about the highest level professors and coaches is that they are on an active pursuit of humility. And here's what I mean. I know that as coaches and professors, we all desire that our students would become better jiu-jitsu players than us. And I do believe that. And I used to tell my students that all the time. Like, I'm not going to hide anything from you guys. I'm going to show you all my secrets. I'm going to show you everything that I have to show you because I want you to be better than me. And that's true. I do want them to be better than me. But the truth is, I am not the watermark of excellent jiu-jitsu. And just because they can be better than me doesn't mean that they can be the best that they can be. So instead, I want my students to be the best that they can be. I want them to beat that guy in the mirror every time. And maybe that includes being way better than I am, and maybe it doesn't, but it doesn't matter. What matters is I'm putting myself lower so that I can elevate my students, so I can make them higher. The idea being that every individual sets their own watermark for what excellent jiu-jitsu is. And you can help them to realize that by getting out of the way. And that's what I think about that personal pursuit of humility is these professors and coaches who aren't trying to be the star of the show, but kind of moving themselves out of the way so that they can elevate the ones coming up. Another attribute I've noticed of the highest level professors and coaches is that they're always creating strong teams. They realize that leadership is delegation. And so they surround themselves with people who are trustworthy. And if there aren't those people, they raise them up from within. And then they begin to delegate to them responsibilities of the academy. And what's more, if you raise your team properly, you don't have to micromanage the delegated item. Let's say you've got a student coach who's teaching a class and you go to attend that class, and your tendency is to just nitpick everything that's going on. Like, these people didn't line up correctly, or this person's not working hard as he should be, or that technique wasn't taught exactly how you would teach it. The best professors and coaches, once they delegate these responsibilities, they leave them in the hands of those trusted people in which they've been delegated to. At my academy, when I go to one of the classes that's being taught by one of my student coaches, it's their class. And I'm not rude to the other students, but if they ask me a question, if I can, I will defer that question to the coach who's leading the class. And if I have a special need, maybe I'm nursing an injury or something and I need to just flow roll, I ask for permission to do that, even though I'm the head instructor at our academy and the owner. I go to the person I delegated that authority to, or delegated that responsibility to, and I say, hey, this is what I need to do in class. Is there room for this? And you trust those people that you've put into place. And I've noticed this about the best professors, is that they trust their professorship and those that they have delegated responsibilities to. Another thing that I've noticed about these amazing professors that challenges me personally as much as it inspires me is that they're relentlessly true to themselves. They aren't trying to be the cool guy who gives out the belts or shows the flashiest techniques. It's just that they seem to like what they like and dislike what they dislike. And most importantly, they never sell themselves to students who may be able to offer them more than other students. Let me give you an example. I was at Home Depot one time and there was a bunch of people behind me and I was next in line. There was one guy in front of me and he was having just an absolute tantrum and we all knew about it. And he was, throwing his arms up in the air and he wanted to talk to the manager. And when the manager came, he said, "You don't know what I do and I spend all this money and I build all these houses out of here and you're going to do this for me and you're going to do that for me." And what was really cool was how the manager dealt with it. Like he kind of calmed the guy down and he said, "Listen, I appreciate what you're doing. We're going to try to solve this. I appreciate your problem. We're going to try to solve this for you. But you need to understand that whether you build a dozen houses out of my store each year, or you just stopped in to buy a hammer or a tape measure, we value you exactly the same. You are no more or less important than any other person that comes into the store." And I really appreciated how that manager handled the situation because he was talking to me kind of. I'm the guy who just goes in for a hammer or a tape measure once in a while. And I want to know that I'm getting the best deal or I also enjoy good customer service. And so it was refreshing to me to see somebody stand up to a bully and say, "Listen, we appreciate all this money that you're spending here, but you're not really any more or less important than anybody else." And that's one of the things that I've noticed about these high-level professors and coaches is that they don't treat their students any differently. Everybody is on the come up. Nobody gets a handout stripe. Nobody gets a handout belt. Everybody has to toe the line. Everybody has to go through the same fire, the same punishment, the same trials, the same tests, all the same things. We all go through this journey together as equals, and that's the way it should be. High-level professors are consistent and they're dependable. They're available to their students. Not that they're just around to be at their students' whim, but they're not put off that their students want to talk with them about the newest, coolest gi or the new belt that they saw or whatever the new video or the new podcast or whatever the thing is, because we realize that, we've been in this sport for, good professor, probably been in the sport for a long time, more than 15 years, more than 20 years. And we've kind of been around the block and maybe not quite as excited about that stuff as we used to be, but we've got time. We're dependable. You can find us in the academy. You can find us at the classes. You can find us around. We just don't act like we're celebrities or that we should be treated any higher or any better or any differently than anybody else. I think the best professors are super relatable and dependable. You know that you can just talk to them. They're just part of the group. And that's the thing that I love most about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, if you're a basketball guy, you're probably never going to get the opportunity to shoot hoops with Michael Jordan or whoever your favorite basketball player is. But in Jiu-Jitsu, you get the opportunity to roll with the Michael Jordans of this sport. And they just come across as normal people and they want to roll and they want to play the game just like anybody else. And so I think that's one of the things that makes it so special. And one of the things that I've noticed about really good professors and really good coaches is that they are dependable and they are available and they are consistent. Another thing that I've noticed about the highest level professors is that they can remain present while still keeping an eye on the future. And what I mean is they're present to the current needs of their academy and the needs of their student base, and they're paying attention to where their students are. They're keyed in to where their students are, and yet they are also keenly aware of where they want to go in the next year, 4 years, 8 years, what their academy goals are and what their student goals are. And, I haven't got this one figured out myself, but I recognize it in some of these really high level professors. I recognize that some of them have the ability to do this, and I'm learning how to. But it does take something special to be able to be totally present and to keep your eye on the future, because usually it happens one way or the other. A guy's really good at being present, but then doesn't end up where he wants to be because he's not future-minded. And then we've got the other people who are too future-minded, and they always seem flaky, or you can't really make connections, and you start losing students that way. But the best professors have really got this figured out. they can stay present with their student base, and still look forward to what's to come. The last trait that I want to share with you about these amazing professors and coaches is probably my most favorite, and that is they have a really strong sense of joy and personal fulfillment. This kind of goes back to a video that I produced much earlier, which I'll include a link to in the description below. But the short story is that to have this kind of joy means that you must be submitted to something greater than yourself. Your joy will be reflected by your student coaches and your students, and ultimately by your academy. And it's one of the things that attracts people. Think about it. You're going to spend so much time and so much energy committed to this one thing. Now, in 10 years, are you going to want to look back and have an awesome experience and say, man, I had so much joy and so much fun and I loved every minute of it? Or you want to look back on those 10 years and be like, man, it was like trudging through the mud and everything was difficult all the time. No, I think a great professor realizes that their students are going to commit a large chunk of their life to this sport, and that it's our obligation to make sure that when they get to that 10-year mark or that 12-year mark or that 15-year mark, they can look back on their journey and say, I really enjoyed it through and through. Even though we're teaching people how to survive in this dangerous world and kind of how to simulate killing each other, there's a way that that can be done in a positive atmosphere. And the best professors and the best coaches know how to make that possible. But what about you? Besides great technical ability, what are some things that you look for in a professor? Write it in the comment section below. I know it can seem like a lot, but believe me, you got this. Happy training, and I'll see you on the mats.